All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're uncovering a fascinating and honestly kind of terrifying archaeological mystery. It's a story where extreme luxury literally predicted a civilization's total wipeout. We're looking at history, sure, but man, it reads a whole lot more like a modern-day headline. It's really all about the hidden dangers of getting exactly what you want. Picture this. Archaeologists dig up this ancient city, right? And it's just packed with these incredible custom luxury ivory beds, the ultimate status symbols back then. But here's the kicker. They discover this entire society was completely wiped off the map shortly after those beds were made. And when you actually look at the data, you realize, wait, this wasn't just some random historical coincidence. That sudden destruction, it's actually a massive warning, and it's meant directly for us today. Which, begs a pretty crucial question, especially for ambitious professionals or, well, really anyone who kind of equates material success with personal validation. We gotta ask, is it actually possible that the comfort we work so incredibly hard to achieve is a trap? Like, is the very thing we're striving for secretly blinding us to our own collapse? To figure that out, let's look at the warning signs and the roadmap to this collapse. We're gonna see how it acts as a diagnostic test for our own lives. We'll cover the illusion of arrival, the ivory bed trap, building on a fault line, the plumb line test, and finally, justice as a river. Okay, starting off with Section 1, the illusion of arrival. This is all about what happens when hitting the goal actually feels like the end. You definitely know that feeling, right? Finally hitting your goals, getting that promotion, building up the portfolio, securing that lifestyle where you can just exhale. You feel like you've officially arrived. Well, back in the 8th century BC, the northern kingdom of Israel, under a guy named King Jeroboam II, felt the exact same way. I mean, on paper, they had absolutely made it. Their borders were the widest they'd ever been, trade was booming, and the elite were building these massive second homes with literal custom ivory inlays. It looked for all the world like they had total divine approval. But reality was a different story. The society was rotting from the inside out. All that flowing champagne, it was just masking an impending collapse. And when a whistleblower, the shepherd from the middle of nowhere named Amos, walked into town to sound the alarm, they completely ignored him. No way they were going to listen to that guy. Which brings us to Section 2, the ivory bed trap, or the danger of going completely numb. So Amos walks right into this booming economy, right past the custom homes and the thriving markets, and he delivers a severe diagnosis that we desperately need to hear right now. Because he wasn't impressed by their metrics. He saw exactly what was happening to the soul of their society, and he drops this chilling quote on the wealthiest people of his day. Woe to those at ease, who lie on beds of ivory and stretch out on their couches. He was pointing out that all their luxurious lounging, that wasn't a reward for a job well done. No, it was a fatal symptom of a deadly disease. The ivory beds themselves weren't really the issue. It was what those beds represented. So the core issue here is what we'll call the ivory bed effect. And the diagnosis is simple. Comfort makes you numb. It induces this dangerous state where you get so comfortable, you just go on autopilot. You stop asking the hard questions about your community, your ethics, your purpose. You start treating your life like it's just an asset to manage rather than a mission to actually live. That's the trap. And the truly scary part, most people lounging on the ivory bed don't even realize the trap is there until it springs closed. Moving right along to Section 3, building on a fault line, the hidden countdown. Because here's the crazy thing. While they were stretching out and managing all their assets, the ground beneath them was quite literally preparing to give way. Archaeology actually confirms the exact devastation. Around 750 BC, a massive 7.8 magnitude earthquake completely leveled the region. 7.8, that is a catastrophic event. In an instant, it shattered the custom homes, the ivory beds, the whole shebang. It shook a society that had become way too soft and way too insulated by its own success to even feel the vibrations building up right beneath their feet. And the book of Amos actually opens with this wild, chilling detail. It notes that Amos delivered his prophetic warning exactly 2 years before the earthquake. For decades prior, they'd had all this prosperity and exploitation, but Amos was out there shouting in the streets while the elite were just ordering another round of drinks. They thought their prosperity was permanent. But Amos proves their success wasn't a reward at all. It was just mercy. It was a final 2-year window, giving them one last chance to turn things around before that 750 BC collapse. So what were they actually doing that was so bad? Well, Amos didn't just look at their luxury furniture. He looked straight at their receipts. He called out these specific, everyday marketplace scams.
They were shrinking their products, they were hiking up prices, and they were so callous, they were literally buying the poor for the cost of a pair of sandals. They were even muttering about when the religious Sabbath would be over, just so they could get right back to cheating people. Amos was warning them, and us, that separating your morality from your business practices isn't being street smart. It's like building a gorgeous mansion on a fault line. And let me tell you, a fault line absolutely does not care how often you go to church or how spiritual you claim to be.
Let's look at Section 4, the plumb line test, the unarguable truth. God actually gave Amos a vision to explain why throwing more religious activity or, positive PR at the problem wasn't going to save them from this impending quake. He shows Amos a vision of himself standing next to a wall holding a plumb line. Now, if you aren't familiar, a plumb line is just a simple string with a weight at the bottom that builders use to see if a wall is perfectly straight. It is a measure of uncompromising truth. God was holding this plumb line to show that he was measuring their lives, their business practices, their whole society against his own perfect character. And the terrifying thing about a plumb line? You can't argue with it. Gravity simply doesn't take bribes. So, if the unarguable truth of that plumb line shows that your wall is leaning, you've got to ask yourself a really tough question. Can you fix a leaning wall just by painting it? Like, can you slap a fresh coat of good intentions over a foundation that's fundamentally corrupt?
The brutal answer is no. If the foundation is fundamentally off, no amount of reputation management, no amount of charitable donations, and definitely no amount of autopilot religious activity is going to save it. You literally cannot paint your way out of a structural deficit. The wall has to come down. The plumb line only tells the truth, and the truth was that their entire society was leaning terribly.
Which leads us to our final section, Section 5, Justice as a River, the timeless corrective action. So what actually fixes a leaning foundation? How do you cure a numb soul, whether you're living in 8th century BC Samaria or today's hyper-connected world? Amos gives what is probably the most famous corrective line in the entire Old Testament. He says, "Let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream." And to really get that, we need to look at the Hebrew. He calls for mishpat, which translates to justice. But listen, this isn't just some dry legal term. Mishpat is the active, hands-on work of protecting people in your society who cannot protect themselves. It means you actually have to get your hands dirty. And he pairs that action with tzedakah, which gets translated as righteousness. Tzedakah is the internal character that makes those right actions a permanent, daily habit. It's not a performance for an audience. It means having an internal current that naturally changes how you treat people, especially those people who can do absolutely nothing in return for you. We all face this choice when evaluating our own lives. You're either a stagnant pond or you are a mighty stream. Look, a stagnant pond might be dressed up beautifully. It might use all the right ethical or religious language, but it's inactive, it's comfortable, it's just sitting there on its ivory bed. But Amos isn't asking for more religious activity. He's asking for a current. A mighty stream is a permanent active force of justice and righteousness that actually alters the landscape around it. We really have to confront this brutal truth embedded in this ancient text. Comfort can actually be far more dangerous to your soul than hardship. Hardship forces you to rely on others. It forces you to ask the hard questions. It keeps you sharp. Extreme comfort, on the other hand, it insulates you. It makes you totally deaf to the warning signs and the plumb lines of life. But hey, the good news is that the story doesn't end with the earthquake. Even after the collapse, the text promises that the ruins of the fallen tent of David can always be rebuilt. God is absolutely in the business of rebuilding ruins. But that restoration, that incredible rebuilding process, that only begins when you decide to finally wake up from the numbness and physically get off the ivory bed. So I want to leave you with this final diagnostic question to challenge your foundation as you take these lessons forward. Look at the plumb line of your own life, your business, your daily habits. Is your life built on a straight wall, backed by active justice and deep internal character? Or are you just comfortably lounging on an ivory bed, completely numb, while the clock quietly hits 0?